have another beautiful day for History Bytes. I feel like we've been very, very blessed this season. Every week it's just gotten better. First one was a little chilly, but we haven't had a rain. We didn't have red tide. We have no hurricane, you know. We're all happy in February in Boca Grande. I'm Betsy Fugate Joyner, for those two people in the audience maybe that don't know. And I'm a native of Boca Grande, third generation Boca Grande, married into the Joyner family that's also natives of Boca Grande. So I don't claim to be a historian. I try to follow a course of history, but I say I tell tales. So my father was a great storyteller, and you could hear his stories over and over and over again, and so I think I picked up bits of it. And my mother was a teacher, so I try to be as close to grammatically correct as I can. But thank you all for coming, and thank you so much to so many people who have been here every single week. It's been really a great series. I did sadly forget to mention our sponsors last week, so I've got them head of the list today. Our sponsors are Bank of America Private Bank, and Kimberly Bleach, who's the vice president of that group, has been here for every single History Bite for, I think, 9 years until this year. She had an accident and had surgery, so she hasn't been here in person to tell her little tidbit and to do her spiel, but Kimberly is much here in spirit. And fortunately, she's keeping in touch with us, and she hopes to be back next year. And we certainly hope they come back as sponsors, because it's been a great gift to have Bank of America be part of this organization. We also have an additional sponsor this season. It's the Shively Charitable Foundation. And Scott and his wife Jill are great also volunteers, and Scott's a board member of the History Center. With that being said, we can have the tents, we can have this great location set up, we can have a videographer, and speaking of videographers, Paul is here, and he has been just exceptionally good this season. We have these videoed, which we've been doing for years, but now they can be seen within 3 days on the History website. So you can, if you didn't get to see them, you can watch them again and again and again. Pass them on to your friends. I've had several phone calls from my brother, especially out in New Mexico. So excited to be able to see the video. And he said, wow, I've learned something every time I've watched it. He said, I didn't know that. And Carolyn told this, and you told that. And, Leslie told this story. And he said, I didn't even know those things happened. He's been gone for a while. Cousin called yesterday. He was excited that he could watch it. And I know on the Old Boca Grande Facebook page, people are watching and talking. And that's what we're about. We're about bringing history together, not just for you here in the community, but to the outreach. And through this outreach program that the History Center has, we can reach them through our webpage. Please become members. We are thankful for all our new volunteers that we have, and we're always looking for volunteers. We're looking for ideas. Jim and Rosemary have done a fabulous job of archiving, and they have so much information that you can follow. Jim has his data notebook, pages and pages of notebooks that he has put together. If you're looking for something, anything, they've got all these notebooks. We've got one up here. So this is available to look through if there's something you're interested in. I called and asked him a question just Monday afternoon. A little bit sad that I had to call him so late. He appeared. He got it. He's got pictures of the past marina that Viola's going to talk about, and she lost all of her photos in the hurricane. So that's a great example there. History First at the Boca Grande History Center is the first Saturday of the month from 10 to 2. It's open to the public on Saturdays those days. We have a pop-up exhibit March the 4th, Monday. And Scott has worked really hard on this. It's going to learn about the local island history and exhibits through that, and it's going to be a really fun one. He's we've kind of made some lists, and he's done some research of famous people. You guys are famous too, but famous people through the years that have visited Boca Grande, and he's done some research. So that should be really fun. These are available to pick up over there if anybody wants to look at them. So thanks to the Johann Fuss Library Foundation for this beautiful space, Julianne Greenberg and Bobby Marquis for all the work that they do to get this organized and make sure that this happens for us. Paul with the video. This morning we've got a little different system. I think Viola and I both known to talk pretty loud a lot, so you'll be able to hear some good stories. Couple things we've been featuring is the book about One Island, Three Hometowns. We've started in the 1800s and we've moved up. Now we're going to be talking from the 80s up a little bit. But one of the things that we've just touched base on, and it's because we don't have a lot of history about it, and we are still researching the Black history. So when I was going through some things this week, I was thinking, there were three hometowns. There was the port, there was Boca Grande, and there was Gasparilla Island. Well, in the downtown portion of Boca Grande, there was a Black community, and it was on Palm Avenue to First Street, and it went back where there were the development, Sunset Realty was not there then, and there were no canals. So I remember them. I remember the chickens and the dogs and sitting on the steps, I think, of a couple of the houses, even with some of my friends who were, those days we called them colored people. But I remember the area, but we can't find any pictures. There's stories, and probably in some of these archives that Jim has, I know there's in a few others, about the juke joint that was there, that was on the First Street side and on the bayou, and that area went down to almost to Sam Whidden's. There was a big house in that way that Clyde Neighbors was talking to me about, where some of them lived. And it was a vibrant community. Those families, they had their own school, they had their own church. The families in that community worked what we called the beach runners, the homes on the beach and along the waterway. And they were really good people. And they were very strong. They were just good people. Then there was another section down at the port end of the island that was also a section for the Black people. And it was the railroad tracks kind of ran through this way, and the port was over here. And the white families that worked for the port lived on this side, and then you drove down this little dirt road off of the railroad tracks, and there was a whole nother section where the Black families lived there, and they had like duplexes type, and they were all raised. Obviously back then everything was up above, so the water came through. The houses didn't get water in them. So those were two very vibrant when I was growing up. Later years, when they closed the Porter's Sunset built in the middle of town, then they built the area down at Tarpon Pass where those homes were there. And it was very sad when we lost that community. So there were also a very vibrant, hardworking, good people in that community that later years we all were kind of together, but they kept their separate rooms. But I became friends with quite a few, and then recently in the last few years had touched base with a man who I knew basically, but I didn't know him because we didn't go to school together or anything. But we touched base. We have an interview from him at the History Center, and he was helpful with quite a few things with us. And then I was in their home in Bradenton, and he passed away this past August, around the same time that Robert Johnson did. And his name was Johnny Johnson, not related to the other Johnny I've been talking about. And I am in contact with some of his nephew and nieces still. So we're still keeping a contact in what we can. We're just sad we've kind of lost that community. So this season is dedicated to Captain Robert Johnson, who was our historian, was the Boca Grande historian before the History Center was even started, but he was a historian for the History Center. His family was one of the first families. This family came in the 1888 area, and they were harbor pilots all through his great-grandfather, his uncle, his grandfather, his father, himself, and his cousin were all harbor pilots. guiding the ships in, and they had to have over 100-ton license, and they were here. And Johnny Johnson, the cousin of Robert, is out of town and was not able to be here, but he retired in 2012. He was the last one to retire. I'm going to just read a little bit about Johnny's father, who was Kingsmore Jr., and this is something that Robert put together. He was known as Bumps to family and friends. And mostly, I'm not going to go into all this because we have it all at the History Center, but one of the things about the Johnson family, from Kingsmore Sr., who was a friend of my grandfather, and the Gaines family, Jefferson Gaines Sr., they were kind of the beginning businessmen in the island that I can find out about, that I know about. There are a lot more, but those three gentlemen were pretty center in helping put the community together. And then they passed it on to their sons and their daughters also. So there was Kingsmore Sr. and then Kingsmore Jr., who was Bumps. And this kind of says it all for all the Johnson family. Members of the year-round community of Boca Grande and many others will remember that Bumps was known for his many kindnesses, his sense of humor, and his storytelling ability. He was an integral part of the old town of Boca Grande and will not be forgotten at any time. I think that could be said for the whole Johnson family and all of those people in that time of history, and hopefully we're continuing that tradition through these families that are still here. So I have another note that's a little hard to talk about, but I've been carrying this with me for a couple weeks in my history bag that I didn't even know I had in the bag. I knew I had it, but I didn't know I was carrying it around with me. Well, this is Jackie Sullivan, and that's us dancing at History Bytes in 2014. Jackie's one of the bad boys. You've seen some of those videos, Dumplin, Wheeler, William Wheeler III, and Jackie. Well, I got word last Thursday that Jackie passed away. So it's a big loss to our community because he was a character and he was always dancing. And as it says in this article, and as we've talked about many, many times, Jackie, I was a little kid, as we talked about the Carolyn, and hung out all the time. Well, those boys taught me how to do the jitterbug and whatever else they wanted me to do at the Crown and Shield House, which is our community house, from the time I was about 9 on up. And I learned to dance, and it didn't matter where we saw each other, even 2 years ago, the last time I saw him. If it was in the middle of the street or whatever, you didn't have to have music. We would just start dancing. And that's where I hope he's doing right now. You can watch the bad boys. And ironically, I'm going to turn this over to Viola soon. She told me to talk a lot. But Viola worked for Jackie at Statewide Pest Control. So I'm so happy to share with Viola this day-to-day and share her knowledge. We had some great talks together the last few weeks, and I know she's going to do great, but I'm going to be here to fill in if she needs me to. So, Viola, it's you.
I guess a lot of people must know me because I'm around all the time, helping people out if I can. And how I ended up here on the island was just a fluke, because I lived in Orlando for years, and I was in hotel management, and I was burnt out. And a friend of mine had moved to Boca Grande. He was a chef at the Pink Elephant, and he kept saying, "You need to come down, you need to come down." I had no idea where Boca Grande was. When I first came here, he drew a directions. This point, from point when you got off 75 to this point was X amount of miles, because there was nothing. It was the blackest place I've ever seen in my life. And it was like 10 o'clock at night because I came down after I got off from work. There's no houses, there's no street lights, there's no nothing. There's Whiskey Corners, and he told me what it was called, and it was a bar in the middle of the road. It was in Inglewood. There was nothing to eat. That was Inglewood, just that Whiskey Corner. And so anyhow, I figured, well, okay, I'm right direction. I kept on going, so nothing else until, and he said, now if you go around a curve to the left, you've gone too far. He said, there's a little tiny sign that just says Boca Grande. But there's no lights, there's no nothing. And needless to say, I missed it. So I had to go down, I had to turn around and come back, and then I finally seen the little, it looked about like this. It wasn't very big at all. And I finally went, I went up, there's a little bridge, it's like a, what do you call them, outhouse. It was just a little, and so anyhow, I came on the island, and then he didn't tell me how far it was into town. He just said, go to the stop sign and make a left. And I kept driving and driving and driving and driving, and it's like, oh my God, where am I at? You know, it was so dark, I didn't know there was water on both sides of it. So when I get to the stop sign, now there's no street lights or anything in Boca Grande, nothing's lit up. And this was in October, by the way, the first part of October. So there was nothing, absolutely dark. So I kind of made the wrong turn. Well, I turned left, but I went too far. And I'm going around, and finally I seen the street, Palm. And I come up through there, and thank God he had just got there whenever I was coming up, so I seen him. So that was how I got to Boca Grande. And he kept saying, well, you should put in your application here. Well, I had no intentions of, changing jobs. And I thought, well, why not? So I went to the theater restaurant. And this was the spookiest thing I've ever experienced in my life. I went over there. It was probably about 2:30, something maybe around 2:30. And I go in the back way, and the bank building wasn't there. That was just all parking lot. And I go in the back door, and there's not a soul in there, but there was there's plates and glasses sitting on a few of the tables and stuff. And I thought, okay. So I'm hollering hello, to everybody. So I go to the kitchen, stick my head in the kitchen, and I'm hollering hello, and nobody's answering me. And then I go up into the bar, and here's all the alcohol sitting out. Well, me, I'm freaking out because this is what I did, in a hotel, and they have it under lock and key, and everything. You don't see bottles sitting out. And I'm thinking, oh my God, and there's a few glasses. It was like somebody had just come, woof, everybody disappeared. So I left because I got really nervous. So I left. So when John came home from work, I told him what happened. He said, this is Boca Grande. He said, you don't have to worry about it. Everybody just leaves everything out and open. I thought, okay. So anyhow, the next day I went back at a more reasonable time, And I put my application in, but I wasn't trying to get a job, so I didn't care. About a week, 2 later, Mark Shavitsky called me. He says, I don't need a manager, but I could use some help. I said, well, I got to work a notice. So I did. I worked a 2-week notice, moved to Boca Grande on December the 9th, 1986. The rest is history. After I took a leave of absence, and whenever the time got closer and closer for me to leave, I couldn't do it. It was like, and so Mark, he wanted me to stay anyhow, so he found me this house to rent. Monte Rodriguez. Matter of fact, Sue owns my house now. And so he found me this house, Monte Rodriguez. I rented it for $500 a month. $500 a month. And then eventually I bought it. And so I lived there for over 20 years in that house. And now Sue lives in it. And she's been there for like 20 years in the house. And it was just in a perfect location. It was first couple months that I was here, it was like, I just had to get used to them rolling up the sidewalks at 5 o'clock. I mean, literally, because that's just when it started getting busy for me in Orlando. And so then, I guess it was probably in February, and that was when the season was supposed to be starting, and everything. And I remember one night, one of the girls, I asked her, I said, when are you guys supposed to get busy? Because we'd done like 90 people that night. And she said, we are. Because we did anywhere from 600 to 800 people a night. That, and if we did less than that, we were called dead. You know, we were slow. But you have to keep in mind this was on Disney property. You know, but anyhow, when she said, "Now thinking, oh my God, I've made a mistake," you know. And so I knew nobody. And so when I would get off from work, I would usually go fishing. I love to fish. And so I had met Gene Bow. Everybody knows Gene Bow, I'm sure. I had met him at the phosphate dock where we had went fishing. And he said anytime I wanted to go, just let him know, and he would let us out on the phosphate dock. And so anyhow, at that particular time, it was like, that's what I would do. I would just go fishing. And then finally, I guess, what was her name? The girl that had did the Broadway shows and stuff. We did.
Christine.
Yeah. And
Tina.
So, and so anyhow, they liked my accent. So they wanted me to play this part. Lord knows I'm not an actress or anything like that. So I thought, okay. So I played the part as a reporter, and from Texas. And so, but anyhow, it went great, and that was where I met Katharine Hepburn. She came to our actually I guess it was the last night of our performance, and so we all lined up, and I had it until just recently with the hurricane. But we had a letter that she had wrote to us and told us how much she appreciated us, you know, and how good we were, which we weren't. But so anyhow, so that's the reason why I don't really have any visual effects for you, because I lost everything during Hurricane Ian, everything. And so, but anyhow, and then Jim, I used to move it up a little bit. I went from point A to point B to point B. I had several businesses here on the island. Eventually, as the longer I stayed, the more I got into. So I used to have the Pass Marina, and it's kind of sad because we loved that place. This was kind of like everybody ended up at the Pass Marina. It was called, I called it the just the welcoming spot. And so I had turned it in. Whenever I got it, there was only maybe about 2,000 boats that was in there. And I filled it up. Had a little tiki, I don't know, it wasn't a tiki bar exactly, but it was like a little hot dog stand on the inside, and had a little boutique. And then I got my captain's license, and then we took people over to Cape Costa camping. And so, but then we got the store, you know, they wanted to build the condos down at Boca Bay. So anyhow, it was a sad day. So, but I loved that marina. You knew everybody showed up there. And
Tell them what kind of marina, what all you did there.
well, at the marina, it was a in and out marina. So I had created a safe haven for people. We did a lot of rescues, people in the past and stuff like that. It was, I'm not quite sure how to put it into words, but it was like everybody ended up there for something.
It was the end of Belcher Road
Yeah.
on the Charlotte Harbor side, so
Right.
it would have been at the very end of that road
Yeah.
before you got into the pass.
Exactly. When you go down to the south end and make a left, and just went down to the end of that street, which is condos now, that was where the marina was. It was just easy to get to, and people hanged out. My employees didn't. They actually, when they got off from work, they didn't go home because it was just such a neat place to hang out. You know, they go fishing, go swimming, or whatever. And swimming wasn't really one of the things that would recommend. but I learned as I went, you know. It was like the more I did, the more I wanted to learn. And, we run tarpon charters out of there. And the people that kept their boats there, they thought that it was because it does get really rough down there. And I told them, I said, listen, if it's too rough for us to put your boat in the water, it's too rough for you to be out there fishing. And it's like, oh, okay, so that became, the thing. So they would always call. I said, call and you'd find out what the conditions are. And then you don't have to worry about driving down here and not being able to go out. And so it became the place. It just was for several years. It was just the place. And we had the little, like I said, we had the boutique. So since we took campers over to Cayo Costa, and they would ask if we had stuff, and like I said, I was learning as I went. And they'd say, no, I know I don't have that, but you tell me what you need and I'll make sure that I carry it. And so I started, and that's how I built my business down there. So I was just constantly busy, even during off season, because I had filled the marina up, and everybody knew that it was just, they didn't have to worry about the weather or anything because they could call and I'd let them know. So it was one of the benefits of having that, and it was kind of like you just met everybody. And at some given time, probably everybody in here had their boat down there, you know.
Like who?
Yeah, Bob Viola, he had his boat there. Kellogg had his boat there. I had a lot of people's boats there.
And Jerry Edgerton had
I know Jerry real well. Yeah, Jerry had his boat there, and matter of fact, we took care of it. And then we came up with this idea so people wouldn't have to wait. If they called us, then we would deliver their boat to their dock to them. So it was like they didn't have to worry about coming down, and it was like waiting. Just let us know a little bit ahead of time, and one of us would take the boat down to them.
Did you sell bait?
We sold bait.
What kind and how did you go?
Oh my goodness gracious. Well, when I first opened, we only had just one little tank. We got so busy that we had to build another tank.
You need to speak a little bit louder back there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll step over here.
Oh, no, I just having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry. And anyhow, we got to the point where we tripled our bait. So all the tarpon, we had the tarpon bait, the crabs and the squirrel fish and the shrimp, whatever they needed, we carried it. And so thriving business there. It was very sad. Yes, ma'am.
Wasn't there some food served down there?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I remember.
Yep.
Best darn hamburgers or something.
We had Boar's Head hot dogs. And then we had sometimes depending on what Boar's Head, it was always Boar's Head. And I had people that would come all the way across the harbor just to get it. Yeah. And that's what they always say, and well, that was kind of like a little fallback on what I used to do, because I was in the food and beverage. But I wanted to make sure, because that's what your first impression stays with people. And if you make if you don't have good food to start with, they ain't coming back. So all of the workers over in Boca Bay at that time, they came over and they had lunch or whatever there. And very rarely, and it just worked because it was self-service and didn't have to put out a lot of effort, just self-service, getting whatever they wanted. I made sure eventually that I got it for them.
And where did you go next? Oh, go ahead.
You sort of glanced over it, but I presume there was no sea tow back then.
Well, we were Towboat U.S. That's how we rescued people.
Yeah, that's
Lots of people.
Did you have any harrowing experiences? People that were out drifted because they ran out of gas?
We had a lot of boats that capsized. guys, the very first one that that's why we started the business. It was out there tarpon fishing. And there was a boat right in front of the marina there that was starting to sink, big boat. And so it was like we was able to get it, tow it back to the marina, and kept it from sinking. And so, and then we pulled, I had some, I wish I still had them, but I don't. Some articles on where a boat sunk over on Johnson Shows, and there was like 5 people in the water. And this was in the wintertime, and it was rough and it was cold. And so I loaded up towels and blankets and jackets and stuff like that, and we got all the people out of the water, brought them over to the marina, and actually I brought them to my house, you know. It was like, and because they needed to find rides and stuff like that.
Get calls at night if people didn't show back up at the dock or anything?
No, actually, I had a base station, so I could hear a lot of what was going on, and we helped the Coast Guard a lot, because the Coast Guard did not, well, there was in Fort Myers or up around Sarasota, I believe, at that time. And so we were in the middle, so the Coast Guard would call us and ask us if we could communicate with these, you know, some of these people. So we rescued a lot of people. I had a lot of rescues. And it was just, and then too, like, we had some, when I had the marina was like the focal point. And so we had like someone that over at Cabbage Key, I guess the lightning had hit their I don't remember what kind of boat it was that hit their boat. But anyhow, we went over, got the person, and brought him back. The ambulance was waiting there for him. The guy survived. It was so we did a lot of rescues.
I had forgotten when electric was on 24 hours a day. Did you have electric 24 hours back then?
Our you know, when I first moved to the island, the very first thing they told me was, don't be surprised if your electric goes out. And so, and it would go out just about every day. About, sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes it would just flash off and come right back on. And then the one time down at the north end, a osprey dropped a limb on one of the lines, and the power went off, what, for 5 hours or something like that?
It happened a lot of times, still happens.
And it was, I mean, it was an everyday thing that the power would go off. But you know what? It was just part of the island life. I got so into the island life, it would be months sometimes before I go off this island. Mm-hmm. You want to see me, you came here. You know, because I just absolutely rode my bike wherever I wanted to go, rode my scooter wherever I wanted to go. Eventually I got a golf cart. But it was just, you know, you could leave the house, you had an appointment at 3 o'clock, leave the house at 3 and you still made it on time. I mean, it was amazing to me how, I mean, I just got spoiled. It was like, and everybody, I mean, it was just like, everybody just made me feel like I was home.
What was your next adventure?
Oh.
Your next, she's had many.
I had many. Well, when I had my captain's license, I'd had my 100-ton, by the way. And I had several other to it. I had my towing endorsement, my auxiliary cell, my able-bodied seamanship, you know, the whole 9 yards. So it was kind of like just to prove I could do it. But then after the marina closed, then I opened a Mexican restaurant.
In Boca Grande.
On Boca Grande, and it was between Hudson and Pink Pump. And I had authentic Mexican food. It wasn't Taco Bell, although I love Taco Bell, don't get me wrong. But I loved Mexican food. And you couldn't, there was no place around close to where you could get Mexican food. And I surely wasn't going back to Orlando to get Mexican food. That just wasn't going to happen. So I opened a Mexican restaurant, and it was a hit. Everybody loved it because it was authentic.
Boca Rico.
Boca Rico. Yep. And we had the best sangria ever. We did. And you know what was really funny about the sangria? I kept I'd find these recipes and I would try them, and I didn't like it. And first time, only time, and never since then, I had a little apartment upstairs, and on a Sunday afternoon, and I'm watching this, whatever it was, and they're telling you how to make sangria. And then really you can make your own sangria any way you want it. You didn't have to follow a recipe. And you could put whatever fruit you wanted in it, just as long as you got several things. I didn't have a liquor license, so I used the wine, and and actually the cheapest wine you can find makes the best sangria. It just does. It just does. I buy these big gallon things. I don't even know what. I hate wine, but buddy, I can make good sangria. And I just bought all the non-alcoholic ingredients except for the wine, and I would mix it up and I'd put my fruits in it. To this day, some of my customers still ask me to make them my sangria.
I think you're going to get orders today.
Yeah, exactly. And they did. They thought it brought them good luck because they take it out with them tartar fish. And it's like, okay. But there's been a few times when I started working for Jack that a lot of the people just knew me. And so I would make them some and take them and put it in the refrigerator for them. And then they'd find it, But I absolutely, and how I ended up working for Jack is Hurricane Charlie happened. Hurricanes has always been my downfall, I think, But Hurricane Charlie happened, and it was small, thank God, but it only affected basically half of the island. And it was pretty bad, maybe not quite as bad as Ian, but it was bad. And so at that particular time, I had no customers. All of my customers during off season came from off island. They came from Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, and all this place, and I paid their tow for them. So if that got out real fast, and so people would come to Boca Grande because I would pay their tow. And they would come and have dinner. So I was always busy, and then I had a little tiki bar. I added that, I had a tiki bar, so I got it from all angles. But
And she had music.
Yeah, I did, and I had music, but it was kind of island music. It was low key island music. So it just kind of fit in with the scenario, and it kept it to where, we started playing at 6 and we'd end at 9. It just, that was the way Boca Grande was. Everybody went to bed at 9:30. But so it was, it was good. But then hurricane just destroyed that, and so I closed it up. And I had sold my house to Sue, and I had bought the house over there on the river. So I just kind of took off for about a year. And then Jack, I knew him. He was one of the first people that I had met through Mark Shavinsky when I moved to the island. So we became real close friends. And so over the years, and he called me and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Nothing." And he says, "Well, I need somebody that knows Boca Grande," because he lived in Clearwater. And I said, "Jack, I know nothing about the pest control industry, nothing." He said, "I can teach you whatever you need to know." That was Jack, right?
Yeah.
I can teach you whatever you need to know. So anyhow, I was getting ready to go someplace another, and I said, well, maybe in November, and I said, well, I'm going here for, blah, blah, blah. And then time just passed. So a couple months passed, and I thought, well, no need to call him because, he's probably doesn't need anybody now. And then he called me again in January. And I thought, well, I said, okay. He wanted me to come sit in some of his meetings and stuff, and I did. Eventually, he convinced me to start to work for him, and that was in June. And that was 18 years ago, and I've been in this business ever since. And so I sort of became his termite expert because that's basically what he specialized in, was termite. So I went and got, the license and certification, and then I taught all the guys what to do. And then when I would walk up to do these inspections, people that they didn't know it was me. They didn't think that I was going, that I did what I did. I said, no, believe me, I'll hold my own with any of the guys when it came to the termites. And eventually then I just kind of got really interested in the business because the insect world is kind of like, it's interesting. It really is. But I knew nothing about it. And so somebody had told me about the entomology department up in Gainesville. So I would call, so I called up there so many times that the professor gave me his personal phone number. He did. He said, you can call this number anytime you want, so you don't have to go through the switchboard. So, and I actually still have that number someplace or another. I'm sure he's not there anymore, but I found it here not too long ago when I was going through some stuff in my desk. His number's still there. But yeah, I would send him stuff. If I didn't know what it was, I'd send it to him. And then he gave me websites and stuff, where I could look up. So I felt like I was going to school again, But, so that was how I ended up. And then Jack, but during COVID, it was like he realized there was a lot of things that he hadn't done. He had a bucket list he hadn't done. So he sold to Arrow. I'm kind of like a lost little sheep, I don't mean? I don't know exactly, like, are they going to keep me or what I'm going to do? But they did. And and they've been really good to me. They kind of leave me alone and let me take care of what I can, for the people here on Boca Grande. And I go out of my way. I'll stop what I'm doing and go whatever I can do for them. So that's how I ended up with Arrow. And if they got any questions, I'll try to answer them. I kind of condensed this into a little bit. Yes, ma'am.
Tell me what happened to the marina and the process with the condominiums in it. What happened?
Well, what happened is there was big green tanks down there, and whenever FP&L decided to go, what did they quit using the crude oil.
They quit using it here coming into. It was stored oil.
Yeah.
Was stored here in the tanks
For the power plant.
For the power plant.
And so they decided to go natural gas, I guess it was. And then they were going to tear down the big green tanks. Well, then when they decided to tear down the big green tanks, all of a sudden my marina come prime property because CSX owned it. I was just leasing the building. I owned the business, but they owned the building. And so they decided then to build the condos down there at the...
CSX built Boca Bay.
Yep, CSX built Boca Bay. And so it was like, this was 3 months. They gave me 3 months, and that was it. And so I had to get everybody's boats out of there. So it was a sad time. It really, really was. And they started working immediately then building Boca Bay. So I took a little bit of time off. I didn't know what I was going to do with myself. And then that was when, I don't know, it just kind of came. I seen when I was up at the Pink Pony, and this area was vacant. And I asked Ken about it. And And then all of a sudden things just started clicking, and that's when I thought, oh man, this would make a perfect little, because I loved going to Mexico and I loved their food. I loved the native part. So everything I had was kind of made to look native. And so that was just how it took, the marina disappeared and then the Boca Rico appeared. And the way how Boca Rico got named, I had no idea what I was going to name it. I just knew it was going to be a Mexican restaurant. And one evening after we were through working across there trying to get things fixed up, we were sitting at the Jams restaurant, and that was when Doug owned it. And
Which
Doug,
is where Sisters is now.
yeah, where Sisters is, and and I don't know, just some people that I knew, and what are you going to call it? And I don't know. And then somebody said, people were coming up with names, and then all of a sudden said, oh, you should call it Boca Rico, which meant rich mouth. And so, but it had a sound to it, and everybody was already calling it that. And it wasn't even named that yet, but that was what it just kind of had that sound. I thought, oh, okay, it's an easy one. So anyhow, that was how that came about, and that's how the demise of the marina. I miss that marina to this day, because you knew everything that was going on. Everything. It was like you could see it. It was just a place that everybody loved coming to, and it was like the Chamber of Commerce. They would come down there, and I had all this information and stuff. I kept it because it was just like they wanted to know things. And so I kept the information, and then I'd tell them where, I don't even remember at that time where the chamber was. I said, you could actually find the information.
Chamber was Mark Shavitsky, wherever
that's
he
right,
was.
Yeah, that's
wherever
right,
he was in town.
That's right. He was the...
He was active in it, but there wasn't really a little tiny... A
Yeah.
telephone, I think, was all it was.
Yeah, it was kind of
There
a
is a
different...
timeline here in this book that Jim put together about the marina. Kind of gives a history. It's kind of started in 1980.
80, yeah.
And then 89, CSX Realty owners of Boca Bay purchased it. And then 89, South Dock Corporation, which was Jack Harper, obtained it from lease from CSX. Then 1990, CSX Realty Corporation leased the marina to Charles Johnson, who was Robert Johnson's son-in-law. 1998, project manager for Boca Bay announces that the Boca Bay would not renew the lease to Marina, and the marina closed in 1998. And it doesn't say that that Viola got it from when
I got it
Johnson
from,
was working.
yeah,
Charles
exactly.
Johnson.
Yeah, we bought the business from him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was in 95. And then that's when they announced that and it was
So
very
we need to
short
add that
notice,
to your
too.
timeline.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't even.
But these
do
books are invaluable that Jim's got together on so many subjects, so it's worth coming up and looking at it when you get a time. Any other questions for Viola?
Yeah. Somebody?
Sure, somebody's got questions.
Yeah, there you go.
Was your Mexican place to hang out for the guides? I seem to remember somebody telling me the fishing guides used to like to come there.
Everybody hung out there.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, they really, truly did. I had a really cool tiki bar, and they loved it. It was kind of secluded back there in the back, and then we moved it up front here. And it was just really a neat place.
I remember Adam came and played his guitar back then.
Yeah.
My son-in-law went into the band and played with them.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it's hard to hear when you get away from that phone there, I guess. Hebe.
I have something to say. It's not a question, but it's a remark. And it's a compliment.
Oh, thank you.
I met Viola. I'm Hebe Murphy.
Oh, hey.
And hi. I met her when I got termites. I did not. They said I had to get the house tended. I did not want to do it.
That's right.
And I kept saying, no, they'll go away. And then they sent Viola.
Yeah.
And after we talked and we got to know each other, she convinced, trusted her implicitly. She knew everything. Like she said, she had a degree from Gainesville. So I said, okay, Viola, if you're in charge. And then she came back with her flashlight on an annual basis. And then when you went to Arrow, I was afraid, but you kept coming.
I did.
And she's everything she seems to be and more.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that testimony. That might get her a raise.
Well, one of the things too, if you'll remember, she had this vine.
Yeah. Oh,
And
it's
it's like one of the main reasons why she didn't want to fumigate.
Right.
Because she knew that vine might die.
That's right.
So what did I do?
Yeah.
We
You did it.
We did it.
Covered it.
I remember we put the water.
Confederate chest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And your vine did
Yes.
not die.
No, it's fine. Thank you, Viola.
Oh, anyone else have anything they'd like to say to Viola?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No.
No, it's like,
Well, I thank Viola so much. This has been so much fun. And I have to say, this whole series about Boca Grande and about her story hasn't even touched the story of the women in this community. As I said last week and the week before, there was just page and page and page of women that we can talk about. So I'd like to thank Kim, who was our first speaker, and also the director of the Boca Grande History Bytes, and Carolyn Parkinson Neighbors, who did a fabulous job, Leslie Joyner, who was here last week, and by the way, she is downtown. Art from the Heart is downtown this week. If you, she said she announced last week, but I told her I would announce it. And like, thank every one of us, and I think everybody is important. And as I try to say, it's like a quilt. We need to keep building this quilt. We need more and more people to share their stories. Come into the History Center, meet Jim and Rosemary and Kim. Our board members are here today. Just wave your hands. And a lot of board members here. Our great board and group at the History Center. We just keep adding, and Jim's got room for a lot more notebooks. One of the things that I want to share is it's a poem from a lady who was interviewed, who grew up in Boca Grande. This interview was done in an oral history on October 30th, 2014. Beverly Hargis Fleming. The Hargis family is another founding family in town. Beverly was an artist, and she lived in Sarasota. She passed away last 2023. But she fortunately was interviewed. This is a great interview that we have in our archives. And I just want to read this poem that she wrote. And I'll probably cry. She says in here that she cried every time she read it. There's a place we all know well, with sand and seas and gulls and shells, a place we love to dream and play. We thought it would always be that way. But as time went by, as it always will, we found our dreams had all stood still. Although the place has changed so much, in our hearts it has not been touched. That was in 2014, and she was born and raised on the island. I think she was probably 86 or something when she passed. So thank you all. Please come and look at pictures. Talk about